Hey there, Internet Keith here, and we are at Gtechniq headquarters, which is just a few miles down the road from my house, so I can come by here and pick up products and talk to them about coating these wheels. They kind of show me how to do it and everything, so when I show you, I don't look like an idiot. So let's get right into it. We've made it back home. We have all the products that we need to prep and coat the wheels properly. I've got my Gtechniq shirt on, which makes me some kind of pro installer. No, not really, but Gtechniq products are very consumer friendly. They're very easy to install. Where we are at right now is what I like to call the perfect scenario. This is straight out of the box. Not much else is needed to do other than to make sure that it is wiped down properly before we put the coating on. But to get to this point, if you've already had it mounted on the car, let's go over that. So you're not always going to have a new wheel. So you want to make sure that you get it nice and clean beforehand. This right here is basically set up for what's called a maintenance wash, which you would do every couple of months if you have a coated vehicle, or one that you take care of pretty regularly. Use good waxes or ceramic sprays. But if it's extremely dirty, then there's a few other steps that I'll go over those as well. But you definitely use your all-purpose cleaner, your fallout remover, get those worked in, agitated, rinsed off. Then you come back. I have a foam cannon, the W4, which is a kind of a degreaser style citrus foam, but it works with the coating, so it doesn't degrade the coating if there is one there already. We use these brushes for the lug nuts and the little hard to reach areas. These detailer brushes work great as well. Once you're done with those, then I would go back one more time with like a regular soap, which is like a G-wash, and then use a mitt. But make sure this mitt is only ever used on wheels. You don't want to use this back on a paint. But I find these really thin, cheap ones actually work really well because you get your fingers in the little crevices. If you use a really thick, nice foamy mitt, they're really hard to get into the nooks and crannies of a wheel and get them cleaned in really well. So once you're done with all this, rinse it off, then you'll dry it with a microfiber, and you check the microfiber how dirty it is, and then see if you need to go back to any other steps. Lots of brake dust, go back to the fallout remover, and continue that process. So once the wheel is completely clean and dried off, we move on to the next steps. If it's the new wheel, obviously we start here. If not, what I would do is I would take a microfiber towel and I would run it around the barrel of the wheel, the face of the wheel. If you're getting a resistance, like the microfibers are catching on stuff, then I would definitely do a clay bar or even a polish beforehand and get that all nice and cleaned up. That way it'll come on nice and smooth. You don't want the applicator pads to get all caught on stuff. It's not going to get coated properly. So the first thing we have is a panel wipe, which is basically a prep. Anytime before you do any kind of sealant, ceramic, just after you've done a polish, you want to get all of that stuff off. You want to basically surgically clean wheel. A lot of people use alcohol. We have the C5, and then after that we are going to do a double coat of C2V3, which is their topper coat that they suggest for this. They do not suggest doing more than one layer of the C5. They just suggest using multiple coats of the C2V3 on top. So you'll open up the box, really small bottle right here, more than enough to coat a whole set of wheels. And then inside your baggie you have these little applicator pads. So for them, one for each wheel. I strongly suggest that you get extra ones. I would probably use one on the inner barrel and one on the outer barrel. The next thing you're going to need is a really good microfiber towel. This is basically just afterwards to level and buff, but you don't have to do it really hard, nice and smooth and easy. One thing to note, it's just like these applicator pads. This is going to get hard and it's going to get all over this microfiber. You can't wash it out, so it's going to become a hard surface. If you use it again on any surface painted, it's going to scratch. So make sure that you have plenty of microfibers. I would say one per wheel is sufficient, and that way you won't scratch any other surfaces. Once everything's completely clean, the last step is the panel wipe. So we spray it liberally on a microfiber, wipe it down really good, because this is what's going to determine how well that product bonds to the surface. cleaner the surface is, just like any product, the cleaner the surface is, the better it adheres. I mean, just anything, a wax. So once you're done completely wiping down and making sure it's all nice and dry, I always kind of go back over with a flashlight to make sure that none of the chemical residue is left over, any hazing or anything like that. Looks like we're all good there. Also, with this type of panel wipe or any alcohol, also the C5 Wheel Armour has a pretty good odor. It's pretty strong, so I definitely want to be in a ventilated area. You would always want to do this indoors. You want to be in a nice room temperature so the cure can be done really well. It's also a lot easier. So when you're taking your wheel off your car, bringing it inside, it's going to be, I mean, your washing is going to be several hours. The application is going to be several hours. You're going to have 12 hours of cure. So make sure you're, making sure that you don't need your car for that period of time. It's going to be sitting on jack stands while you get those wheels nice and clean. All right, then we'll flip to the barrel side. Now we're going to repeat the process on the barrel side, but once we're done, we'll start coating from the barrel side, because that way when we're done, when we flip it back over, we do the face. We want the face facing up. You don't want the face facing down after you've coated it, because the product does take 12 hours to cure, so you don't want to rub it off. The only place that you might rub it off is here, but you're just going to be setting this on a towel, and this is just this outer surface, so it should be okay. But you definitely don't want the face of the barrel to touch. You definitely want that up. Let's wipe down the barrel. Barrel's pretty easy. That's the problem is when it's an older wheel and it came off a car, this is the part that is probably the dirtiest. You may even have some rust in here, depending on what type of wheel you got. If you don't have an aluminum wheel, if you have a steel wheel, but you definitely want to make sure that you get every little bit. All right, so first things first, before we do the coating, I should have worn gloves when I did the panel wipe, but definitely before you put this on, you definitely want to wear these gloves. This quartz is going to dry on. You don't want to rub it into your eyes. You don't want to get it on your hands. It's kind of like super glue. It kind of sticks to you a little bit. The cap on this, you want to take it off. It has a little knob here on the top that allows it to do little droplets. If you're a parent of a kid who needs air drops or eye drops, then you know how a drop method works. I said they told me 3 to 4 drops per applicator. Immediately put the cap back on to make sure that you preserve the product and don't let it dry. Now there's multiple methods that I've heard. Some people like to coat the barrel in the inner and not these inner spokes. Some people like to do both. Some people won't even level or buff the haze off afterward, because it's just the inner barrel. It's still protected. It's just not leveled. It's not a perfect looking surface, but it's a surface that nobody's really ever going to see. All right, so we're going to do 3 to 4. Comes out pretty quick, so I was a little more than 3 or 4, but if you do more than 3 to 4, then it will just last longer before the next few drops. So we're just going to do it on the barrel. You can see it going on. I'll run this flashlight real quick. You can see the difference. It's just a wet look. This really doesn't haze up a whole lot. Now, if you apply, you're supposed to let it flash for just a second or two. I'm checking. I'm seeing some hazing. Not a whole lot though. All right, so we come back with our microfiber, level it out. Instructions say to do half a wheel, then buff. So that's about the flash time. So you basically follow the same pattern that you did when you put it on to level it out. So that way, what you had just applied is still a little bit wet, so that way you give it a little more time to flash. Like I said, I'm not putting pressure at all, I'm just slight buff. Now this isn't the super important side, because obviously this is inside of the barrel, but I definitely do not see any hazing. So now we move to the more important part. The barrel isn't as much getting perfect as the front. Okay, so for the front, I've added an extra light here to make sure that we really make sure that we get this nice and coated, because the front is what matters the most. Like I said, the box comes with 4. As you can see, I've already pretty beat up the first one, so I definitely got some extra ones. Moving on to another new one. We're going to use the same microfiber cloth though. We just want to make sure that we do it in quick enough time that this stuff doesn't start to dry. We also want to make sure that since we're doing proper coverage, that we pick a pattern, start on that pattern, work the exact pattern all the way around to make sure that we get complete coating. Put that cap back on quickly. And I'll start from the B on BBS, and I'm just going to work my way back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the outer parts. We're going to do a lot of cross back over here and there as well, making sure that we get everything properly coated. I'll probably go back when I'm doing these inners and then catching the outer again, and then I want to make sure I get this one outer edge. That's going to be really hard to get when the tire's on, and let's work to the inside. As you can see, this thing's getting pretty beat up. I might switch sides to the softer side in a little bit. All right, we're gonna start with this inner spoke here. Make sure that we get all the way down. Also, see how far this product goes. You can see we did one wheel and we still have well over 3/4 of the bottle left. The bottle was only filled to about right here. So, all right, we're done with the front. Should be pretty flashed now. So we're gonna start from the same pattern that we were using, and then just kind of lightly buff it off. You can definitely tell how much slicker it is already. Just like once you put any kind of sealant or anything on a tire wheel, you can feel how slick it is. And actually, looking at it in this light, I really don't see a whole lot of, high spots or anything that you would normally see with putting on a ceramic coat on paint, as opposed to the C5 is a much easier install. There's just a little bit of leveling. Let's get a nice close-up of the coating. In the flashlight, as you can see, it's just nice. I don't see any hazing. You kind of pull the flashlight away a little bit and then focus in. I think we're pretty buffed off. Now they're just going to sit and we're going to let them cure for 12 hours. I'm going to work on the other 3. You don't need to do those on camera. Then we'll come back and we'll do this T2 V3 coating on top of that. All right, so it has been 12 hours of curing time, so it should be good now. We're going to do 2 coats of the C2 V3, which is a topper coat. I use this on my car as well. It's just basically like a ceramic spray type of product. We just spray it on, wipe it down, and then buff it off. On the car, normally I would spray this onto a microfiber directly and wipe it down because I don't want to get overspray onto a panel that I've already worked on, that kind of stuff. But since we don't have that problem here, I'm just going to spray it down. We'll let that flash for about a minute or so and then we'll buff it off. Alright, so it's flashed for a minute or two. Another thing I want to point out is I'm using 2 different microfibers, one to buff and one to not. When I'm doing on the car, a lot of times I'll have it folded in sections and I'll wipe on and then wipe off. But a lot of times I prefer to just 2 separate cloths. It's just easier. So we'll buff it off, same fashion that you put it on. Now with the C2 V3, it doesn't leave a lot of haze. So a lot of times with a lot of products that leave a lot of haze, it's easier to see how to level and take off when you buff. But you can really tell once it's fully done, the surface gets really, really slick. Like you can really feel it, like it just rubs around, just slides around real easy. That's when you know you've pretty much removed all the product. So now I'll go ahead and do another coat. The C2 V3 you can immediately coat right on top of the next coating. There is no cure time. I already discussed that with Gtechniq. So first wash. You can see how that coating just beads up everything. Makes it a lot easier to wash. I have no complaints whatsoever.